Hi everyone, welcome back to the online Northwest Art Center pottery classes. Today we're going to make a berry bowl, and it's more like a box or one of those cardboard boxes that you buy your berries in. So we're going to make it out of clay to look like that. So you might want to set up your workspace like I have here. I have a piece of newspaper or a paper towel or something underneath my work that will make it easier for me to turn. We're going to need to turn this a lot. And my bowl is going to be upside down. My bowl is much more square than yours. Yours are slightly different. I just didn't have quite enough of the ones that I gave to you all. But yours are very similar. They might be a little taller, a little more rounded, but it will work just the same. You should have your 2 long strips of clay. I only have one out right now, but I'll probably need to get my second one. And this is going to be your pattern, the long strip of clay. Because my box is a little bit wider than yours, I cut myself a slightly larger pattern so that we can still use the same number of strips. So what we're going to do is we're going to make strips and we're going to lay them across here and then lay them this way and join them all together and put a strip around the top to hold it all together. So what you need to do first is take your pattern and cut at least 8 strips of clay. If you, while you're cutting, you might want to do an extra one just in case one gets damaged. You should have enough clay to get 5 strips out of each one. So I'm going to move this over a little bit. And I'm going to start by cutting, get this on here. And if you have the extra length, go ahead and you can make these a little bit longer even than the pattern. You can use either your wooden tool as a cutting device, or if your parents feel comfortable with it, you can use this sharper blade. Just be careful, it is quite sharp. Mine's a little dirty too. And you will need your fork and some water and a paintbrush for doing the joining. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and start cutting. I'm going to hold my pattern with one hand and carefully cut. Whoops, came away a little bit. Carefully cut away a nice straight edge there. Keep my scraps. You should be keeping all your scraps wet and moist in a Ziploc bag. We'll use them in some of our future projects. And then I'm going to come along here and cut on this side. Really take your time. And a little bit wider, although that's not quite as thick there. Then I'm going to take my pattern, move it over, use that one line that I already cut as the one side, and then keep cutting till I have at least 8 strips. And like I said, you might want to do an extra one or 2 in case one gets damaged. Okay, I'm going to pause the video and come back once I have all my strips done. Back again. So once you have all your strips done, you can spread them all out sort of close by, but not so they're going to be in your way, because we're going to be spinning this around. Before you get started though, it's much easier to clean up the edges of these before you build the berry bowl. So I'm just going to get my finger, a couple of my fingertips a little bit damp, and I'm just going to run my finger down those edges, not getting them really goopy, but just taking that sharp edge off from where we did the cutting. Okay, whoops. Try not to nick the ones next to it as you are doing this, like I just did. Dug my fingernail in. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to start in the center. So I want you to take one of your strips and lay it across the center of your bowl, and we're going to have some extra clay hanging down on the edges. So you want to press it gently so it takes on the form. You don't want to leave it kind of curving up along the bottom. Gently press it in and try to get these corners pretty well pressed in, but then you want the tail sticking out on the end, and we're going to trim those later. So do not trim them yet. We still need some of this clay. And then once you have the center one, we're going to do the same one on either side. I'm going to take this one pretty close to the edge and do the same thing. Press that down in. And a third one as well over onto this side. If you find some rough spots, smooth those out as you go. And there we go. And then you might want to turn it at this point. Now this next strip is going to lay across the center here. So before I press it down though, and maybe I'll flip it over depending on what side you're using. I think that's going to be my bottom. So I'm going to lay it on here and just line it up. And then I'm going to just kind of mark where the edges are because I need to score this, right? So I can flip it over and see my mark. So this one, I know where to scratch, right here in the center. Pretty much well, yours is a little narrower, so try not to go too far past where it will. And then the marks that I used, I need to score between those and that one and this one. And that just gave me a guideline as to where it's going to touch. And then a little bit of water. I've got my same clay from before, or my clay water, so it's starting to look a little more like slip. And I'm going to add a bit of water to those 3 spots. And then lay it back on here so that those line up. And just like the first 3, I'm going to press this down so it's pretty firm and sticking out around the edge there. And do that 2 more times with the next 2. So that one's going to be there. And I'll do the scoring in between the lines there. And actually you could just line your next one up beside it and do the same thing. Cut out that one little step. But then don't forget to score here as well. And then everything gets some water. And all of these as well. And then line up those 3 spots. Put a little bit of pressure on there to help seal it. Notice I'm not super wet and goopy. And this one will line up the scratched marks as well. Smooth that out. All right, so now we want to take a piece and go along the top. So I made my top pieces the same thickness as yours, just because I'm using a different bowl. I didn't want my top strip quite that thick, but yours can all be the same. So these ones are going to wrap around here, so you won't need the full length of both of them, and that's going to be our top one, our inside one. So I'm going to cut it off halfway through here so that the seam is going to be hidden. But I think first what I'll do, yeah, maybe I'll just start with one end. So all of these pieces then need to be scored as well, where it's not quite lining up the way I like. Okay, so this is going to go in here, and this is going to fold up and around it. But I want this to be very secure. So I'm going to scratch the top. Well, it will be the top. It seems like the bottom right now. Right in here, and actually on both sides. And over here as well. Still in the camera here. Okay, so this, I'll start it here, just because I don't want lots of scratching marks in this space, so I'm not going to just scratch the whole thing, because I don't want to see scratch marks. So I'm going to start and have this one line up with the center of my middle one here. So I'll score there and score there, and go ahead and attach those. I'm going to put this up against the wall. So this will be a seam, so I want that hidden in the center of this center strip. And then as I wrap around, I can see where these are going to line up. And then put a little water. Oops. And press it in. A little bit of pressure. And this corner can wrap pretty snug around the bowl here. And then I'm going to continue over here, and I want this one to end in the center there. So I will go ahead and cut that. And then secure those pieces. Didn't trim that one close enough. There we go. Okay, and then my other piece is going to do the same thing over here. And then wrap around this side. So take your time, score all of those seams so that they will stay nice and snug. And get it tight around the corner there. And trim this one off to meet. And you can smooth that seam together a little bit, but it will get covered up. And you might take a moment, run your finger along this edge, make sure it's just a little bit rounded so it won't be sharp. All right, now these tails we have here, we're going to wrap those up and around here and then attach them and trim them off. Probably wrap them right up to here or wherever they go. I made my strips a little bit longer than my pattern as well, so if you did that. But even if they just wrap around and come onto the clay here, that is fine. But we do want to go around and scratch everything. So I know I'm kind of working on top here, but you guys may want to, spin yours around so you can reach each side. I'm working over top so you can see, but if I were sitting down, I would move the project to where I'm sitting. And we want to wrap that up and around nice and secure. And like I said, you can cut it off wherever it seems to make sense to you. And then we'll go around and clean up those edges later on as well. And if you have some extra clay left, if you want, you can wrap some clay around these corners. That's kind of optional. You might want to make them, you could just do an extra band there if you want. You don't need to go all the way around. But if you want to put an extra little corner piece on there, instead of having this whole big section open, that is another option. All right, again, I'm going to pause here and I will go around and finish mine, just so the video is not going to be quite so long for you to watch. Okay, so I've attached all of my ends and I started cleaning those up. So you might want to take a few moments, go along, you can get your finger just a little damp, soften all those sharp angles, smooth it out a little bit. You don't want to squish it too much. And now this is going to need to sit on the bowl for a little while, but not too long, and probably not overnight or anything. So I wouldn't leave it so maybe an hour or so and check it. This is one of the things I always do after you guys go home after class, is I would take these off the form a little bit later on. So when you are ready to, and don't flip yours over yet, but when you're, and maybe I'll come back and do this, but I'll show you guys later. So when you're ready to take it off, you're going to peel this off and take the plastic out and the tape, take the bowl out and the plastic will stick. And if it feels like it's still a bit floppy, you may want to leave the plastic in a little bit. So I'll come back in a little while and check on this. If you get some little cracking at the curves, a little bit of water, kind of smoothing that out. That's just the clay. I'm using a different clay than you guys that isn't as forgiving. So, but you can see how it's pulling away from the bowl. So I don't want to take that off yet. So I'm just going to let it sit here for a little while. And I will come back later on and take the bowl, the form, out from inside it. And then don't forget to put your name on it as well. All right, I'll see you later.